Oh, testing 1, 2, 3. Does everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you hear me. All right, and for everybody that doesn't need to speak at this time, if you could always just put your microphone, all right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the District of Brown Deer School Board meeting. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to be able to call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Verification of public notice was publicly noticed. Verification of a quorum. We have all 7 board members in attendance. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Dr. Beto, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Zig. All right, motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Dr. Beetle, this is Lisa. I'll second.
All right, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, hearing, seeing none. All in favor with raise hand and or aye. 4, 5, 6. Missing 1. Ms. Smith. Oh, there we go. Motion carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you so much. All right, and let's go on to our mission statement. Together with our families and community, we will inspire students to be passionate learners, creative thinkers, and innovative leaders who enrich our world. All right, let's go on to our item number 2, items for discussion, consideration, and possible board action. Ms. Heitska, lead us through the ground report.
Sure. Good evening, board members. So we have been, Dr. Brown started a new process of us giving weekly updates. So most of what is in my report, you should already be aware of, but to the community members and staff who are on the call, I'll just go over briefly what we've been working on over the last month. Summer is just a really busy time for my crew. We tend to do all of our life safety testing during the summer because there are no students and staff in the building. So that includes testing the fire extinguishers, the wand doors, the kitchen hoods. So that has all been completed. And then we will be completing the fire alarm testing in the next couple of weeks. The other big item that was completed over the last month is that we had our annual inspection with the North Shore Fire Department. They did complete all of our buildings at this time. So they looked at the middle school, the high school, the ASC, and the elementary school. They were pleased with how we are managing the space. They did find some small things to correct, which I always embrace because nobody is perfect and we all have work to do in this journey of life. So there were a couple of issues with signage. So those have been ordered. And of course, the storage areas are always in need of purging. So those were the 2 big takeaways from that periodic assessment from the North Shore Fire Department. You may also have noticed that the soccer goals on the 60th and Bradley the soccer field have been replaced. So those are a very, very nice improvement to that space. And then finally, the bridge that leads to the elementary school has been given a little bit of a facelift. All of the boards that were on the bridge itself have been replaced. So it looks really great now. Are there any questions that I can answer? Okay. Then that is my report. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Jody. Appreciate all of the work you and your team are doing. We know it's a very, very busy time of year for you guys to go ahead and get our building and our grounds up to the level and expectations, and appreciate everything that you guys do. So kudos to you and your team. Let's go on to item number B, discussion and approval of last item. Dr. Kelsey Brown.
Good evening, and thank you, Dr. Beto and board members. This evening, we would, as we continue to plan for the 21-22 school year, we would like to bring for not only discussion, but also approval this evening of continuing on with the wearing of facial coverings here in the school district of Brown Deer. We are looking for our mask policy to be in place for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic, as was stated in our previous board summary when we first had to go this route. There is the opportunity for us to think about until further notice. If there are data and statistics that suggest there's an opportunity for us to move away from this. But and let me also say, I am also pleased to report for summer school, we're one of few districts, let me say, that continued our mask policy all the way through summer school. So we did not use summer school as a beta test to figure out if we could go mask optional. But I'm also pleased to report that as a result, we did not have any noted positive cases in summer school, given that we continue to implement that mitigation protocol. So as we continue to plan for 21-22, recognize that we are dealing with a different strand of COVID in the spirit of trying to keep making sure we keep our staff and our students safe as we bring more students back to in-person learning on the first day of school this year, as opposed to last year when we were virtual for 3 weeks and started school on September 21st. Of which we all remember because it's Dr. Beadle's birthday, just FYI. We want to continue to be responsive to keeping everyone safe and healthy by remaining consistent as we have been, again, one of few districts that has established a level of consistency with this particular mitigation protocol, among others, as we continue to move forward for the 21-22 school year. So with that, again, the executive summary pretty much remains the same as the first one we brought forward to the board last year at this time. And we are open to any questions you might have regarding the approval of this particular policy.
Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Kelsey around her administrative relationship to approval of this mask policy? All right, because we all had that information and we were continuing on kind of where we were last year, being able to do that, been successful. The safety protocols and things of that nature that have been put in place by the district, air filtration and everything else like that. So again, I'm going to bring it back out to the board members again. Any questions? All right. Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve the school district of Brown Deer mask policy?
Dr. Beadle, I'll make a motion to approve the school district of Brown Deer's mask policy for the duration of COVID-19 pandemic as presented.
All right, a motion has been made by Ms. Daniels Ashley. Do we have a second?
Dr. Beadle, I will second.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. Motion has been made, seconded. Any discussion before we go into vote? All right, hearing and seeing none, all in favor with raised hand and or aye. All right, motion carries unanimously, 7-0. All right, let's go on to. All right, let's move on to item C, discussion and approval of the grading policy. Dr. Brown?
This agenda item is actually Mr. Garrison, Dr. Beadle. Yes.
No problem.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garrison.
No problem. We work so closely together. The grading system we adopted first of all, thank you, members of the board. The grading system that we adopted last year was designed to communicate student performance while at the same time reduce any inequities related to instructional access with our students. As you all know, we did have a lot of challenges last year as it pertains to our virtual platform and virtual learning with a phased-in approach that we went through throughout the entire school year, if you ask me. We had a phase 1 approach where we brought back 25% of our students, phase 2, 50, phase 3, 75. And of course, right around January, February, we petitioned the board to allow any student who want to come back to school to be back in person. With that being said, our students also were, of course, faced many challenges during our pandemic. And so that we put in a grading policy to reflect overall opportunity for all of our students to be successful. With that being said, all students will, so one of the things that we put in place was our ABC, incomplete, and or passing grading scale. This year, we would like to continue that same thought process, but also add our the D letter grade back to the conversation, as well as keeping things the same as it pertains to all students, starting at a 50% on in all of their classes, and of course, additionally, looking at the elimination of the zero. We also wanted to make sure that by having this new grading policy in which the D would be added to the conversation, that we would again capture more students coming back to school and to try to regain some sense of normalcy during our, of course, when the world's pandemic. With that being said, again, the letter grade of a D will be added back to the conversation we wanted to add the letter grade D back to the conversation for the 2021-2022 school year, as well as keeping our incomplete conversation there. We did have a lot of students that did receive some incompletes this year, but we were able to lower some of those incompletes by our use of our summer school program, which you'll hear more about some of those successes at the end of this month. With that being said, our policy pretty much will remain intact outside of adding the D letter grade back to our conversation. And that is pretty much my overall snapshot of what we will be changing in this year's policy with board approval.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Garrison?
Mr. Garrison, can you help us understand a bit better? What do you mean by they start at 50%? Like, how does that process work?
Sure. So one of the things that we really wanted to do is make sure that all of our students had a fair chance in a pandemic to really get themselves underway. And so all of our grades, pretty much all grades start off with 0, but we really also wanted to not use a 0 as a grade during a pandemic because of what it could implicate on a student's overall growth. So now all the students will start off at a 50%, which is pretty much still incomplete in our conversation, but they can grow from there, giving them the most opportunity to pass a class. Again, even under a 50% conversation, we still had some numerous, I didn't say numerous, we did have incompletes this year, even with that starting point. But we believe that with the incomplete conversation that we've had with our teachers, creating folders for our students to go back and get the work, to complete the work, has been very effective. And we want to continue that conversation overall. When I say very effective, yes, there are things that we can work on to make it better. But I do believe all of our students had the opportunity to work in a pandemic school year and still gain the necessary academic achievements under this grading policy that we had last year. What we'll be adding back to the conversation now would be that D level mark. So of course, in the executive summary, you see a 90 to 100 is an A, and going down from there, pretty much 10 points to meet the 60 to 69 would be the D.
All right. Any other further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Garrison, this is Felita. I have a question regarding the incomplete. And quickly, if you could explain, were you pleased with the percentage or the numbers of students who converted those incompletes into letter grades? And are you optimistic that you'll be able to get students, if for whatever reason they end up with an incomplete, being able to convert those incompletes into letter grades?
So it's hard to say, am I pleased? Naturally, we want any student to receive an incomplete. And that's just being honest from that thought process. But we did find out that there was a lot of students that did have some challenges in the virtual platform and learning on the virtual platform. Not until January, and like I said, early February, when we made the shift to bringing back all of our students where we were able to see a lot of changes in some incomplete conversations, where students were able to come back to school on a full-time basis. I am confident that we have put a system in place in which we have captured all students' work. And so if a student did receive an incomplete, there's a folder that was created for them electronically in which they can go back, complete the work, and receive a letter grade during the school year. And so, yes, some students will be programmed into, let's say, study halls and or work can be done in our high schools during our HIP time to recoup some of that learning loss. During the summer school time, students are only able to receive a passing letter grade if they completed all of their work due to the fact that we didn't have all teachers teaching summer school. So we had to make some type of adjustments to fit the needs of our students. I believe, again, based off of what we will be coming back into this year, that we'll have a lot less incompletes. And with the simple fact that we are all, well, who wants to be back in school can be back in school, and we'll regain some sense of normalcy in the conversation. So that's what I'm confident in, that when we come back to school, that we'll gain some sense of normalcy, and that students will be able to recoup their learning at a faster pace in which they did possibly having to learn from an online perspective the entire year. Some of our students, I will say, have been out since last March, 2019. And so this will be a new opportunity for some of our kids to be back in school and to get, again, regain some of that sense of normalcy as pertains to coming to school on a daily basis and receiving high-level classroom instruction from their teachers.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members before we go to a motion? All right. Hearing and seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve the grading practices as presented?
Dr. Vito, I'd like to make a motion to approve the grading practices as presented for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you very much. The motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I will second.
All right, Ms. Robinson, thank you very much. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, hearing and seeing none. All in favor? Uh-oh. Something just happened. For a second. Our view just went different. All right. All in favor would raise hand and or aye. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. All right. Motion carries unanimously 7-0. I think the shared screen went on right when I was trying to count before. All right. Let's move on. Let's move forward to item number D, discussion and approval of mental health days for students. Dr. Brown and Mr. Garrison.
Dr. Vito, thank you once again for this opportunity. I'd like to preface this agenda item by saying this is no longer an agenda item for discussion and or approval. It is more of an information item in that our policy number 5200 actually covers this. In my mind, recognizing all of us have universally experienced this or have engaged in this COVID experience, it was more about being mindful of and proliferating from the standpoint of our school district, who provides laser-like focus to SEL strategies for our students, to make sure that we're highlighting the fact that our students are and will be afforded the opportunity to take mental health days if they so choose or when they need it. So often in our school districts, we've been noted to our physical, when we break our ankle or not feeling well physically, we honor that. And I'm not suggesting that we do not honor it here in Brown Deer. I just want to highlight, proliferate, and elevate to our community the fact that we're going to, in our student handbook, make it better known to our students that when they are having issues around depression or anxiety or any other of those factors that are considered mental health, that we want to be on top of that even more as we continue to move forward. I call it having our antennas up even more and providing laser-like focus to that. So it's really, again, not for discussion or approval because it already exists in the in one of our policies, but more about being consistent and intentional about messaging this to our students so that they know that this is something that they can avail themselves to. Now, we still have to follow the process in that your parents, have to call you in for it to be an excused absence. But again, we just want our students to know and understand that this is a space that they can operate in and that we will be mindful of that and honor that, recognizing that across our communities, we all know that mental health can be stigmatized or can be seen as a stigma around many of our students and families. So it really, again, is about highlighting it, proliferating it, elevating it, and being intentional about messaging this to our students, given what they have all experienced, and recognizing they are still students and may not necessarily have the coping skills or coping strategies that we may have as adults. So that's really that agenda item. But I'm also willing to entertain any questions you may have regarding that.
Questions? I have a quick question, and this is maybe more for Ms. Antondari. The way that this is put together right now, do you have the necessary staffing in place to ensure that this happens?
So currently, we do have our cell team, and actually we've added to our cell team to be able to provide students the necessary supports. And we are also looking to be able to avail ourselves to having necessary supports for our staff as well. I am in the process of working with various community agencies to help our cell team when we need to identify and provide necessary supports that students and or families may need. So to answer your question, yes, at this time, we do have the necessary supports. And then once we partner with agencies around what services they can provide us, we'll be ready to go.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else have any further questions when it comes to the mental health days for students? All right, thank you very much for that discussion and enlightening us with that. So let's move on to item number E, discussion of dress code administrative guidelines. Mr. Garrison.
Yes, give me 1 second real quick here.
While Mr. Garrison is pulling up the screen, Dr. Beadle, if I may share, I want to give a great big shout out and a great big thank you to all of our staff members who engaged in our Live at 5 town hall meetings. So what we know is in May of 2020, our town hall meetings were implemented as a result of the Mr. George murder in Minnesota. So after we continued to engage in those conversations, it then evolved into or morphed into continuing to have our equity conversations, but thinking about, in this case, it morphed into talking about our dress code and how our policy, reviewing our policy and taking a look at how our policy may target certain kids and trying to create equitable practices around that. So some of those members, they were diligent, they were there and we met Sunday night once a month at 5 o'clock. And so I think that speaks to the or Sunday nights at 5 o'clock once a month, but that speaks to the commitment of our amazing staff here in the Brown Deer School District. And so for those of you who are on tonight, a great big thank you for you all being a part of the conversations that were really thought-provoking and very intentional about where we're trying to go with this. And then also to Mr. Garrison for bringing his equity work, looking at it through his equity lens as he transitioned from his previous district to us, thankfully, to help continue to facilitate the conversation. So the first slide is the team. And I just wanted to give a public thank you to everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules on a Sunday night at 5 o'clock once a month, all the way to the end of the school year to bring this to fruition. So when we talk about outcomes of what we are implementing and activities, and strategies, here's one of the results of the Live at 5 town hall meetings that we had. So thank you, everyone.
So that was a seamless transition. Thank you, Dr. Brown. One of the things that we did again, like Dr. Brown has already mentioned, is that the Live at 5 town hall meetings, again, morphed and transformed into a lot of different discussions that we really start talking about equity, and this equity really connects us all in a lot of different ways. And the group that was online, of course, as you can tell from the team, I just want to personally give a shout out to everyone that's on the screen here. Mrs. Demmer, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Orvis, Mrs. Turner, Mrs. Schaufler, Mr. Green, Mrs. Robinson, one of our board members, Mr. McCray, Mrs. McCray, Mrs. Steeler, and of course, Mr. Yachik. These were there were many more. Well, I will say that these were consistent people that we definitely saw here in this conversation. Naturally, we've already discussed our why. We know why we start having the conversation, and again, the what came into what discriminatory practices in schools became. What discriminatory practices do we have in our schools that we could actually address as a team? And we pretty much kind of morphed into the conversation around the dress code. This was not something that was prompted or pushed or, kind of, how can I say it, an agenda item. It was one of the things that kind of automatically came through our conversations that what are some of the things that we can do to address certain discriminatory practices that we have in our own school district. And that's where we, of course, came up with the dress code policy and looking at possible revisions to it. Naturally, I'm not going to go through all the different policies, but just know that our current policy does state that we are supposed to have a dress code policy. It really doesn't go into too much details outside of naturally our attire can't be disorderly, our attire can't be excessive or express certain negative possible behaviors that kids could possibly wear on themselves. Overall, I will say that this is one of the things that I believe we can implement in our school district. Give me 1 second to get the screen back up on this. Give me 1 second here. Sorry about that. I will say one of the things that we believe that we could impact was, again, our dress code policy. And again, these three agenda items here, of course, the current dress code practice, and then of course our equity policy also connects this conversation. Our equity policy was adopted 2019. Believe it or not, it's almost 3 years old at this current time, and it also aligns with some of these revisions aligns with our equity policy, in that we want a dress code that is not discriminatory towards anyone. The next slide here really discuss some of the infractions that we saw in the Brown Deer School District due to just dress code. In 2018, 2019, there were 56 school level infractions. And then 2019, 2020, prior to our closure with COVID-19, naturally, we had 52 school level infractions. Now, one could say that that number could have went up from March, or it could have went down, or could have just stayed, not went down, could have just stayed the same. But those were our infractions as it pertains to dress code. One of the things that I would like to say that anytime there's an infraction on the school level, students are asked to possibly leave the classroom, which we all know when you're asked to leave the classroom, that's learning loss or potential not time with your student and with your peers receiving instruction, high level instruction. So those are some of our data that we were able to pull from as it pertains to our dress code infractions that we had. The next slide here pretty much goes over our dress code revisions. And Mrs. Williams, who is one of our trusted people that was definitely on the conversation with us every single Sunday night, Mrs. Williams will take us through some of the literature in our new dress code revision. Give me 1 second to pull that up. So Mrs. Williams, if you are online, please feel free to unmute yourself. And
Thank you.
Yep, you can take us
Thank you,
through the
Mr.
slide.
Garrison.
No problem.
One of the things that came out in our conversations was that we needed to ask the question, what actually interferes with learning? And if there was a fashion, since we all know how important it is to teenagers and younger ones to be in fashion, we needed to be mindful that if there was something that was in fashion that did not distract from learning, was a problem. And also various socioeconomic status. If there were things that did not distract from learning, that some people could afford and other people couldn't afford. We shouldn't be embarrassing anyone. We shouldn't be singling anyone out. And if people, based on their ethnic and cultural heritage, if they had things that were important to them to wear that did not distract from learning, again, who are we to be the fashion police? We should be the learning police, if you want to be police at all. And we should simply see that everybody was treated equitably, everyone felt respected, everyone felt valued, and that the students were allowed to express their individuality and their own sense of fashion in any way that did not offend anyone else and did not distract from learning. So when you look at the what students must wear and what they must not wear, that was some of the thinking that was behind it. So Mr. Garrison said I should limit it to about 2 minutes, so I think I probably used that up.
Oh, you can continue if you need to, Mrs. Williams. I think we do have just a little more time to dive into some of the information here as it pertains to what we believe students should be able to wear as well.
Well, sure. Another thing I guess that I didn't mention was body image. We certainly have heard a lot in recent years about people having body image issues that lead to all sorts of mental health concerns, not only lack of self-esteem, but also eating disorders and that sort of thing. So again, we wanted to be inclusive of many different clothing choices that made people feel not self-conscious, but rather comfortable in their own skin and their own lives, their own identity, and to give them that kind of freedom. And you notice that there are things in there that specifically do not let people denigrate others. So in other words, anything that would be a symbol of hate or discrimination, that sort of thing that impacts the feelings of others, that was prohibited. And so we felt that this was the kind of standard that we believe in a diverse community that is so proud of its diversity. Another issue that did come up was preparation for the workplace. And so we realized and recognized that students needed to learn what was appropriate and what was not. They needed to learn, for example, that how you dress to go to Bradley Beach at the lakefront is not how you dress for a job, and not how, therefore, you should dress in a classroom. There's also provisions that if there were specific clothing that would be specific in job training, that should also be included. So in other words, some of our students who are aiming at a job, they might be working in some sort of an apprenticeship, or they might be in some of the business classes, that they need to learn appropriate attire for their career aspirations. So those are some of the things that we discussed. And Mr. Garrison, is there anything else you want me to address?
Actually, you did a wonderful job. Thank you so much, Mrs. Williams, for that deep explanation of kind of what we went through. I also wanted just to bring note to the simple fact that one of the things that we know that's true is that what I have on necessarily doesn't impact what I should be learning in the classroom. I think sometimes we don't want to say that, but it should be stated. It should be stated as such. There's not a lot of research out there that supports if I have on a halter top, whether or not I will be able to learn better in the classroom. We know that a lot of the discriminatory practices as it pertains to dress centered around African-American students, especially Black females. And I just want to make sure I bring note to that. There's no secret to this conversation. You can find that literature in many different places. And again, the Brown Deer School District is not exempt from the thought process that we did have some discriminatory practices as it pertains to who was identified in these conversations as it pertains to dress code, possible infractions. One of the things that we will go back to as it pertains to our presentation here, give me 1 second to present this back again. The Brown Deer School District also has some commitments, and we are committed to making sure that all of our students achieve at a high level. We also do not want any of our dress code conversations to interfere with student learning. We also do not want any of our students to feel as if what they have on should stop them from receiving nothing but a top-notch quality education. And I believe that those statements is also echoed in our equity policy, and we wish to continue that same thought process going into the 21-22 academic school year. I will say this year, with some of our students being here and a lot of our students being online, a lot of our teachers saw how we could actually do something different in this conversation. And we just didn't have that situation. So students came in with a hat on. Some students didn't have, some students had on a hoodie. And none of those things stopped our students from learning. None of those things stopped our teachers from working with our students. And it also created an opportunity for our teachers to create relationships with our kids. And that's kind of what we wanted to end. Positive relationships that can actually flourish at the highest level. Yes, there's the opportunities for us to have conversations with kids based off of a dress code infraction that we clearly have marked in our policy or in our administrative guideline. We still want those conversations to be restorative. We've talked about SEL being not just something that we want to practice, but something that we also want to live here in our school district. And that social emotional opportunity for us to connect with students, even as it pertains to dress, can be attached. So that's kind of what we have here for our presentation. And I would like to say thank you. And I'll open it up for any questions to the board.
All right, board members, any questions in relationship to the discussion on the dress code, the administrative guidelines? Any discussion? All right, because this is actually informational for us, that we were not actually voting on this. So that's why I was asking, is there any other questions?
This is Lisa.
Yeah, Ms. Linsky, go ahead.
I don't have any question. I just want to thank the group who participated in this. It seemed very thoughtful and well put together. I did compare the previous policy to the new one and felt it was very nicely done. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Any other questions or statements?
And may I just also add, Dr. Beadle, prior to my ascension, Dr. Beadle and board, prior to my ascension to the superintendency, that there were students who were engaging. They've now graduated, but there were students who I had the opportunity to engage in conversations with about this from the standpoint of this was mostly a group of females in the notion or the idea around body shaming in terms of size of individuals and who wears and who's wearing what. And so I just wanted to let it be known that there has been some student conversations that started pre my arrival to the superintendency that I wish I would have been able to get my arms around in Mr. Garrison's seat, but I am happy to say that because we have this year-long process to kind of work through this, that I really feel like we're in a good place. And it could allow us the opportunity to be less punitive, if you will, around our students when it comes to what our beliefs are around what a dress code could look like. So it takes some courage to do this because I know that there are individuals probably on both sides of this, but we think we can find a balance in this and help our students understand as you move on from the Brown Deer School District into the workforce, there are going to be guidelines that you have to follow, all contingent upon the career that you choose, the career that you choose to go into. So we believe we can balance both and place our kids and our students in a good position where they can still get that high quality teaching and learning experience, but not have to be worried about what do I put on to wear to school today. as it relates to what we were able to put together. So I just wanted to reiterate that students have been part of this conversation prior to where we went last year. So again, thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to our next item. It's item number F, approval of new hires. Mr. Clemming.
Dr. Beadle and board, excuse me, we have no new hires at this point, but we are working feverishly behind the scenes, and I assume you can expect a slate of candidates at our next board meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Clemming. And now let's go on to item number G, approval of resignations. Mr. Clemming.
Yes, we did receive a resignation from one of our contracted teachers, Anthony Parr, our high school special education teacher, effective immediately. And so we would like the board or the administration would like to recommend that the board accept his resignation. I am asking you just to add the pending receipt of liquidated damages, but we have had contact and written assurance by Mr. Parr's incoming school district that they will be compensating the district for that. So we are confident we'll be getting those liquidated damages.
Okay. All right. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Anthony Parr?
Dr. Beadle, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Anthony Parr as a high school special education teacher pending receipt of liquidated damages.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Zick. Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Ms. Robinson? Motion has been seconded by Dorothea. All right. Any questions? Any discussion? All right. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor with raised hand and or aye. All right. Motion carries unanimously 7-0. Approving the resignation of Anthony Parr. We wish him luck on his future endeavors. And as we always say, once a Falcon, always a Falcon. All right, let's go on to item number. I'm sorry.
Just sorry, Dr. Beadle. I just wanted to point out that I did also on the employment summary point out we did have two other staff support staff members resign, but in the new policy that those will be handled by the administration and not the board. We're bringing those to you for informational purposes only, just so that you are aware when we do have change. But we'll keep you up to date on those. But that wouldn't be something you'd have to approve. But we did have two more persons resign this week. Sharonda Stewart, a special education aide, and Lisa Orvis, also a special education aide, both at the elementary school.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's go on to item number 3, adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Dr. Beadle, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Linsky. A motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Dames Ashley. All right. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor with raised hand and or aye. All right, motion carries unanimously. I call this meeting adjourned at 6:46 p.m. Thank you so much for spending this time with us in order to learn more information about the school district of Brown Deer and more importantly, how we're getting ready to come back to this next upcoming academic year in a safe way and ensure that our educational standards are at the top to be able to do that. So thank everyone. God bless and good night and stay safe.